I've been playing games for nearly 3 decades now. Throughout this time, I've become more and more aware of the power of nostalgia and its hold on this industry. Remakes, remasters of the remasters. There's money to be made in bringing back well-established IPs. Now, you could chalk this up to studios being lazy. Instead of coming up with something new, just go back to what worked before. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, find a way to sell it for $70. But a market only exists because people are buying. To me, these games reveal our collective desire to return to a past long gone. Our childhood. I'm not just talking about remakes here. Despite the millions of dollars that have been invested into the next cutting-edge AAA game, there are plenty of indie developers that would rather do the opposite, opting instead to return to basics and create a game that celebrates and builds upon the classics. This is exactly what Team 7 Star hopes to do with their game, Code Bunny, a 2D action platformer that draws direct inspiration from Mega Man, Gunvolt, and of course, if you've been watching my channel for a while, Sonic the Hedgehog. When Team 7 Star reached out and asked me to review their game, I was all for it, which is evident by the fact that you're watching this video right now. What they shared to me about Code Bunny piqued my interest, and they fully supported my condition that I'd only review their game if I could be honest with both my praise and critique. So with all that said, I want to thank Team 7 Star again for entrusting me to review their passion project. And without further ado, here's Code Bunny. Code Bunny takes place in the year 2090 on planet Lumna. You're given the option to play as Axel or Hazel, two members of the VY space program who are tasked with searching for Aether, the most powerful energy source in the world. For my first playthrough, I selected Axel, a former ice skater who bounces and twirls off enemies as he skates his way throughout each level. Whenever Axel performs a spin attack against an enemy or bounces off of one, he adds to his X gauge found in the bottom left corner of the screen. Filling up this meter gives Axel different abilities like the Aether Barrier, a shield that briefly protects him from taking damage. In addition to his standard melee attacks, Axel's special offensive moves include the Comet Kick, Comet Dash, and the Comet Bounce. All three deal high damage to enemies, but also offer Axel different ways to move throughout the stage. All of these abilities, however, come at the expense of depleting your X gauge. Hazel's playstyle mirrors Axel's, but with a slight twist. This samurai soldier is able to mark enemies with her arrows and slice through them instantly with her signature move, Ghost Crescent. Like any good swordsman, Hazel can parry incoming attacks and cut through them just as easily with her melee combos. Speaking of combos, every combo you complete with Hazel fills up her karma meter. When Hazel's karma meter increases, she becomes more vulnerable to damage. But if Hazel's karma exceeds her health, she'll begin to glow and enter karma mode. In this state, Hazel deals 4 times more damage, but any damage she receives will drop her to critical health. Karma buildup can be managed by performing a Ghost Crescent, which not only strengthens this move, but also is an effective way of dealing with karma that may be eating into your health. So in Code Bunny, you have the choice between playing as Axel, a bit of a tankier character that's able to take hits and push through enemy lines, or Hazel, who's more like a glass cannon that's able to dish out damage, but requires you to balance both your health and karma. Overall, the movement for both characters felt great, which, I don't know about you, is pretty important for a platformer. I use a controller for all my playthroughs of this game, and moving both Axel and Hazel felt pretty intuitive. But if I were to choose who I prefer to play as, I'd have to pick Hazel. The arrow and Ghost Crescent combo is pretty addicting. I think if given enough time and practice, players can get really crazy with each character's moveset and find creative ways to chain combos and traverse through stages. Code Bunny fully embraces this kind of playstyle with giving you the option to play the game in Classic mode or Speedrun mode. In Classic mode, players can select any level they want to play through without getting interrupted by cutscenes. Speedrun mode gives you the option to play all the stages back to back with a timer running in the background. So if you're a masochist and enjoy the anxiety of completing levels in record time, then Speedrun mode is perfect for you. As a caveat, Axel and Hazel both have their own versions of Speedrun mode, and both have to be unlocked individually. I'm not too sure how exactly this is done. I was able to unlock speedrun mode after beating the main story for both characters, but I don't know if the same could be said if you just completed classic mode. Now, with all that said, one criticism I have with Code Bunny's game design is the enemies. Look, from the beginning, Team 7 Star told me that Axel and Hazel's campaigns could easily be completed in like an hour or two. So I don't think they were aiming for a super difficult game, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. My issue is that the enemies' presence in each level don't really pose a threat. They lack a sense of danger. Sure, enemies pop up here and there, but very few would actively engage to attack you, unless you stood really close to them or provoked them. The game already has a class of enemies that hone in on you. Adding more of these aggressive enemy types would foster a more challenging but fun playing experience. One of the most memorable moments of the game was when you play as Hazel and fight off this swarm of enemies hunting you down. It easily became one of my favorite levels, and I wish we had more like it. But what Code Bunny lacks with its grunts, it makes up for with its bosses. It's only recently I played Mega Man 2, and I can definitely see Mega Man's influence in how the boss fights are designed in Code Bunny. Each boss you encounter has a distinct identity. The fights feel kinetic and lively as these characters fly around the screen with these bright colors, throwing energy projectiles at you while you try to dodge, parry, and attack. To be blunt about it, the boss fights were just a lot of fun to play through, and I'm sure people will enjoy finding unique ways to beat them. It also doesn't hurt that the boss fight music sounds really good. I would say that Code Bunny's soundtrack overall is excellent, because let me tell you, nothing is worse than a bad video game soundtrack. Being forced to listen to a terrible song over and over again is basically a form of psychological torture. That's why I want to give Team 7 Star props for developing a sound that's nostalgic, distinct, and just nice to listen to. In my opinion, music is a foundational building block in crafting a game's world. And one of the main things I love about Code Bunny is how expansive the world feels with its intriguing history and colorful characters. When playing, I could tell the developers put a lot of thought into the game's world building and lore. This is clearly felt when you play through both Axel and Hazel's story. Our two heroes are forced to contend with the recent emergence of Mad Bunny, a terrorist group that seeks to dismantle the VY space program. As Hazel and Axel go on their adventures, they'll uncover the mystery of the world they live in and ultimately the truth about themselves. When first playing the game, I was caught off guard by the existential questions the narrative asks of its main characters and by extension us. The ideas and storylines in Code Bunny actually forced me to think about my own life. Now, with that said, I feel like the execution of these elements could have been handled better. There are a lot of big ideas in the narrative that I feel didn't have enough time to develop. But the main issue I had with the game's story and characters is how much telling there is versus showing. Exposition isn't always bad, and it's necessary when you're introducing someone to a world they've never been before. But there were so many moments in Code Bunny where characters would just explain to you the world's lore or about how they feel, rather than letting the players learn all of this through the gameplay. There are literally moments where a character just tells you what they did instead of showing it in the game. The feature that's most guilty of this problem is the talk room. Players are given the option to chat in the talk room before moving on to the next level. What I like about this feature is that it gives the cast of characters the opportunity to let their personalities shine. But what disappoints me about the talk room is, ironically, the lack of interaction. What the talk room ultimately ends up being is you clicking a button over and over again, reading lines of text from characters telling you about their backstory. Imagine instead if the talk room was an open hub where players can explore the space station, and from exploring, players will organically learn more about the crew they work with and the world they're a part of. I understand that there may be practical reasons as to why an open hub isn't feasible, but I don't even think a hub world has to be big. As the name talk room suggests, it can quite easily just be a room. Without spoiling too much, there's a moment in both Axel and Hazel's campaign where the players can do exactly what I just suggested. Both have a level that lets you actively take part in learning more about their backstory. Besides movement, level design is a key element in developing any platformer. And considering that this is a story-driven game, there was such missed potential in exploring the game's world and lore more deeply with its level design. Code Bunny's levels felt bare and empty. Besides adding more aggressive enemy types, I think one way to address this issue would be to create levels that cultivate a sense of discovery. Early on in the game, we learned that planet Lumna is heavily influenced by the major tech conglomerate Lagos Hyperbolics and the government of Xanadu. And while it's true that we could see some of their influence in our cast of characters and the talk room, I think it'd be better if we saw more of their presence in the levels we play through. Maybe include Xanadu agents in the background, or show Lagos Hyperbolics being advertised in neon signs. Another way of filling in the levels would be to add hidden collectibles. This not only encourages replaying the game, but also offers players a fun way to learn a bit of lore with each collectible they get. This issue of telling, not showing, also bleeds into our heroes. As much as the game focuses on Hazel and Axel, their stories feel disjointed. Code Bunny's premise is based on the fact that Hazel and Axel are a reluctant duo forced to work together. But the thing is, you never see them actually do this. There's never a level where you see them working together at the same time. Besides the talk room, the closest moment we have of them together is a cutscene where the two have a heart-to-heart, and that's about it. What's even more bewildering to me is how there's a level with Hazel being followed by another character. Wouldn't it make sense if there was a level where Axel follows Hazel, or vice versa? As a 2D action platformer, Code Bunny is designed for players to move forward in each level they encounter. This design philosophy holds even more resonance in the game's narrative. The main theme of Code Bunny's story is about moving forward in life and learning to let go. And I know I'm repeating myself here, but the way they explored this subject matter forced me to think about my own life. Any game that's capable of having this effect is worth commending. There's no doubt in my mind that Team 7 Star put a lot of thought and care into Code Bunny. Look, I understand that I've been pretty critical so far, and that's only because I see a lot of potential for growth. I know how much more this game is capable of because there are elements in it that directly address my criticisms. For example, both Axel and Hazel's designs and abilities do a great job informing us about who they are as characters. Being an ice skater, it makes sense that Axel would move the way he does. And there are deep thematic reasons behind Hazel's moveset as well. There was even a moment in Axel's campaign that took me by surprise. It was so creative and unexpected, but yet it also deepened him as a character. What makes me excited for this project and Team 7 Star is what's ahead. At the time of recording this video, the developers are in the process of adding a boss rush mode, which sounds like a great idea. This game is still evolving, and I look forward to seeing it become more fully realized. Despite my criticisms of its storytelling, I still had fun playing Code Bunny, which at the end of the day, that's what a video game's all about. Code Bunny is a platformer that celebrates its retro heritage, and if you're a fan of this genre, consider getting Code Bunny on Steam. Thank you again to Team 7 Star for sending me a review copy, and for those that are still around, thank you for watching this video, and until next time, peace out.